Kevin Stefanski never wanted to start Shedeur Sanders. That much is clear from how the quarterback was buried in the depth chart and from Stefanski's cold post-game handling. No game ball, no public praise, no long-term commitment. The pushback, reportedly, came from within. Andrew Berry, the Browns GM, saw something Stefanski didn't. A quarterback prepared to... But when Jimmy Haslam stepped in, Stefanski's opinion became irrelevant. Haslam's warning was unmistakable: start Sanders or step aside. In that moment, a traditional coaching decision became a test of organizational control, and Stefanski found himself undermined by the very structure meant to support him.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
What's happening in Cleveland isn't just about a rookie quarterback. It's a case study in how internal dysfunction and external pressure collide. Sanders has refused to flinch through all of it. He studied relentlessly, stayed composed under scrutiny, and turned a franchise in chaos into one with hope. His debut wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The Browns' quarterback situation may be volatile, but Sanders' discipline, performance, and leadership are forcing everyone, from coaches to owners, to rethink who really holds power in today's NFL. The Cleveland Browns are no strangers to dysfunction, but this time, it's not just about bad play calling or locker room tension. It's way deeper. This is about power, ego, money, and a quarterback named Shedeur Sanders caught in the middle of it all. According to confirmed reports, Browns owner Jimmy Haslam didn't just express a preference. He handed down a flat-out ultimatum to head coach Kevin Stefanski: start Sanders or your job's on the line. That's not speculation. That's not a rumor. That's ESPN-confirmed chaos. The reason? Declining ticket sales, fading fan interest, and a financial slide that had the front office sweating. Fans were tuning out. The stadium was thinning. And there was one thing, one name, bringing the fan base back to life: Shedeur Sanders. But the twist? Stefanski didn't want him. He wasn't Stefanski's guy. He wasn't the coach's pick. In fact, insider reports say Sanders' name didn't exactly land well in the war room. There was resistance, disbelief. Some didn't see him as NFL ready. Others thought he wasn't a system fit. Whatever the reason, he started his NFL journey buried deep on the Browns' depth chart, practically forgotten, until the fans wouldn't let him be. The moment Sanders showed flashes of leadership, composure, and raw potential, even in limited reps, the momentum shifted. Supporters rallied. Social media exploded. Ticket sales began to reflect what fans wanted, not what the coaching staff preferred. And that's when Haslam stepped in. And Shedeur Sanders. Ownership interference is nothing new in sports, but this wasn't subtle. This was direct pressure. A make-or-break demand that Stefanski reportedly had no choice but to obey. Sanders would start, period. Not because the head coach believed he was ready, but because the owner believed he had to start to save the franchise's relevance and revenue. So Stefanski complied. But from the moment Sanders was named the starter, the vibe was off. There was no enthusiasm from the coaching staff. No full-throated endorsement. And even after Sanders led the Browns to a win in his debut, throwing for over 200 yards and launching 3 deep bombs over 30 yards, the support wasn't there. No game ball. No post-game hype. No clarity on his future. Instead, Stefanski gave the media vague week-to-week statements, refusing to say Sanders had earned the role going forward. It didn't matter that he energized the offense or that the fans were more excited than they'd been in years. The coach simply wouldn't commit, and the backlash came fast. Stephen A. Smith called out Stefanski on national TV. Shannon Sharpe blasted the coach's handling of Sanders. Cam Newton accused him of undermining his own quarterback. And they all pointed to the same thing. This felt personal. Smith even highlighted how Stefanski pulled Sanders off the field in key red zone situations, robbing him of touchdown moments that could have built momentum and confidence. To many, it looked intentional, like the coach was trying to limit Sanders' success just to prove a point. This wasn't my call. And through all of it, Sanders stayed silent. No passive-aggressive interviews. No cryptic posts. Just focus and professionalism. Reports say he was the first guy in the building and the last to leave. Studying tape. Working with coaches. Treating every start like a final exam. That's not normal behavior for a rookie quarterback thrown into a politically charged mess. But Sanders didn't just survive it, he excelled. He didn't panic in the pocket. He made sharp reads. He hit explosive plays. The offense, which had been sputtering, finally showed signs of life. He wasn't just managing the game, he was elevating it. And yet, Stefanski still won't buy in. That's the most glaring sign of the internal divide. Because if a rookie quarterback walks into a hostile situation, wins the game, ignites the fan base, and earns the respect of analysts and teammates, and still can't get a public vote of confidence from the head coach, something is seriously Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, and that break might go beyond Stefanski. Reports suggest a possible split between Stefanski and GM Andrew Berry, who reportedly backed Sanders from the start. If true, the Browns aren't just dealing with a coach-QB rift, they're dealing with a leadership fracture at the top. A GM and head coach on opposite sides of a decision, both answering to an owner who's made it clear he wants results now. This kind of instability doesn't stay behind closed doors for long. Players notice. They hear the rumors. They see who's getting credit and who's getting thrown under the bus. And when a guy like Shedeur puts in the work, handles the pressure, and performs, only to be met with silence from his own sideline, that sends a message. It says politics matter more than production. And that's a dangerous message to send in a league built on trust and merit. There's also the fan pressure to consider. Cleveland isn't a casual sports town. They live and breathe this team, no matter how chaotic it gets. So when they get behind a player, especially one who brings visible change to a long-suffering offense, ownership feels that. Which circles back to Haslam's, this wasn't just about football. It was business, economics, marketing. The Browns needed a spark, and Sanders became the symbol of something new. A fresh start. A reason to believe. And Haslam wasn't going to let that momentum slip away just because the coach had different preferences. But this sets a dangerous precedent. If ownership can override the coaching staff on who plays quarterback, what's next? How much control does the head coach really have? And how do you build a long-term, stable culture when power is being yanked from the sideline to the boardroom? That's what Stefanski is up against. And that's why his cold treatment of Sanders feels so deliberate. It's not about performance. It's about control. About drawing a line in the sand. But that approach has consequences. Because if the Browns win with Sanders under center, and Stefanski still refuses to back him, he'll look like the obstacle. The guy putting ego over progress. The coach who would rather be right than win. And that perception, it sticks. Right now, the franchise is standing on a razor's edge. On one side, a young quarterback who's shown he can lead. On the other, a head coach who clearly didn't want him but has to deal with the fallout. And above them both, an owner playing puppeteer, pulling strings to keep fans in the seats and money flowing in. This isn't just a quarterback controversy. This is a full-blown organizational power struggle, played out in real time, under the brightest lights in sports. The question now is, how much longer can they keep walking this tightrope? At some point, someone's going to have to give. Either Stefanski fully embraces Sanders, or he risks losing the locker room. Either the front office unifies behind their new quarterback, or the fractures grow deeper. And either Haslam steps back and lets football people do their jobs, or the dysfunction becomes permanent. But what's clear is this. Shedeur Sanders didn't ask for this drama. He didn't campaign for the spotlight. He just walked into a fractured franchise, kept his head down, did the work, and delivered. And if that's not worth backing, what is? If you're watching the circus unfold and want more real updates, wild developments, and front office meltdowns from around the league, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Because if the Browns have taught us anything, it's that the story's never over. It's just getting weirder. Stefanski and Shedeur Sanders, the Cleveland Browns are on the verge of something. Whether it's greatness or another spectacular implosion depends on who blinks first. Let's be absolutely clear about where this team stands. There is no longer a football-first culture in Cleveland. At least, not one that's functioning the way it should. Right now, football decisions are being made through the lens of economics, public pressure, and internal politics. And the person caught dead center in the blast radius is rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders. What started as a fan-fueled movement to give Shedeur a shot quickly escalated into a full-blown front office war. When Jimmy Haslam issued an ultimatum to Kevin Stefanski, start Sanders or face the consequences, it didn't just change the quarterback room. It sent a signal to everyone in the building. The balance of power had officially shifted. And Stefanski? He wasn't just handed a personnel suggestion. He was given an order. His job, his authority, his long-term future, all of it was now tied to a player he never championed. That alone would be enough to put any coach on edge. But the real kicker? Sanders showed up. He didn't just check the box. He changed the tone of the team. He gave fans hope, something this franchise has been starving for since the last great quarterback storyline imploded. And instead of leaning into that moment and building on it, Stefanski went into deflection mode. No game ball. No long-term commitment. Just post-game interviews filled with vague platitudes and phrases like "we'll evaluate, it's a week-to-week league." And he did some good things. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. That might sound neutral on paper. But in context, it's a wall of passive resistance. A way of saying, this isn't my guy, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. And the tension is bleeding out into every layer of the organization. According to insiders, the divide between Stefanski and GM Andrew Berry is growing. Berry was reportedly on board with Sanders early, while Stefanski remained hesitant. That kind of split at the top of a franchise is dangerous. When the head coach and general manager aren't aligned, everything underneath starts to fracture. Player development, game planning, locker room cohesion. Now, add in an owner who's already proven he's willing to override both of them if it serves his financial agenda, and you've got a leadership structure that's teetering on collapse. And yet, somehow, through all of this, Sanders continues to deliver. His first start wasn't just passable, it was impressive. Over 200 yards through the air, 3 deep completions over 30 yards, and most importantly, a win. That kind of performance should earn a rookie some leeway. Maybe even some internal confidence. But in Cleveland, it earned him more uncertainty. Because this story isn't about talent. It's about control. And let's not forget, the media saw right through it immediately. Stephen A. Smith didn't mince words. He accused Stefanski of sabotaging Sanders by pulling him in critical touchdown scenarios. Shannon Sharpe backed that claim, saying Sanders was being punished for succeeding under the wrong banner. Cam Newton, never shy about calling out dysfunction, said what everyone else was thinking. This felt like ego over execution. And they're not wrong. There's a reason this situation feels so raw. It's not just that a young player is being disrespected. It's that the dysfunction is so transparent. Normally, these power struggles stay behind closed doors. But the Browns are airing their issues on live television, with every decision dissected and every hesitation amplified. And still, through all of that noise, Sanders keeps grinding. The reports are consistent. He's studying harder than anyone. He's putting in extra film sessions. He's working with coaches behind the scenes, not complaining, not stirring the pot. He's doing everything exactly how you'd want a rookie to respond. But that might be the most damning part of this whole situation. Because if Shedeur Sanders wasn't doing the work, if he was reckless, unprepared, or immature, then Stefanski's caution might make sense. But he's not. He's been professional, polished, and productive. So the only reason left to keep him in limbo is pride. And that's the most dangerous motivator in sports. It raises a question no franchise ever wants to face. What happens when your coach starts rooting for his quarterback to fail? Because whether Stefanski is doing that intentionally or not, the optics are brutal. And players see that. They feel it. It affects morale. It creates division. And when your quarterback becomes a flashpoint for controversy rather than a foundation for growth, your season stops being about football. It becomes about survival. And survival rarely breeds the fans, though. They've already made up their minds. They want Shedeur. They believe in him. And they're tired of being jerked around by a front office that only responds when money starts drying up. That's what triggered this whole thing in the first place. The decline in ticket sales, the drop in enthusiasm. It all became too loud to ignore. And Jimmy Haslam, seeing the writing on the wall, acted. But let's not get this twisted. This wasn't about player development. It wasn't about the future. This was about economics. This was about keeping fans in the seats and headlines off the financial reports. Haslam made a marketing move and dressed it up like a football decision. And now the franchise is stuck in the fallout. Because if Stefanski starts winning with Sanders, he doesn't get credit. If he loses, he gets blamed. And if he waffles too long, he loses the locker room. The only way out of this is to fully embrace the guy he never wanted. And right now, he doesn't seem willing to do that. Which leaves one outcome on the table. Someone has to go. If Shedeur keeps performing and the coach keeps hedging, the Browns will have a decision to make. Stick with a quarterback who's turning heads and building fan trust, or protect a coaching regime that's clearly misaligned with the new reality. And based on how this has played out so far, it's pretty clear where the momentum is heading. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. Haslam has already shown he'll intervene. Berry has already staked his support. The fans have already chosen a side. Stefanski is the one holding out, and in this kind of power struggle, the lone holdout rarely wins. But even if this ends with Sanders becoming the full-time starter, the damage is already done. The Browns didn't just mishandle a quarterback decision. They exposed their inner chaos. They showed the league that even in moments of clarity, they can't escape the shadow of their own dysfunction. And Shedeur? He's just trying to play football. That's the tragedy and the triumph in all of this. Despite the politics, the power plays, and the silence from his own sideline, Sanders has kept his head down and done the job. And that is what has fans so locked in. Not just the arm strength, not just the highlight throws, but the maturity, the focus, the resilience. He's giving Cleveland something it hasn't had in years, belief. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to shift the culture. But only if the people in charge get out of the way long enough to let it happen. So now the spotlight's back on the Browns' leadership. Will they double down on dysfunction? Or finally give the city a quarterback worth building around? That answer will define the franchise, not just for this season, but for years to come. Let's get brutally honest here. The Cleveland Browns are at a crossroads they manufactured themselves. This isn't the result of bad luck or a key injury. This is the product of ego clashes, ownership panic, and a franchise that can't stop stepping on its own shoelaces the moment things start looking up. They had a spark. They had the momentum. They had a rookie quarterback step into a hostile situation and walk away with a win. And somehow, instead of rallying around that, they turned it into an internal Cold War. At the center of it all, Shedeur Sanders, a guy who's done nothing but show up, show out, and shut up. That alone should be headline-worthy, especially in a league where young quarterbacks are scrutinized into dust and rarely afforded grace. But instead of celebrating him, the Browns have made him the most controversial QB in the league. And not because of how he plays, but because of who believes in him. When ownership is trying to fast-track a rebuild through the back door, and your coach is pretending the results don't exist, you know you've entered the upside down. And now, every single week is a pressure cooker. Not for Sanders. He's handled this with more poise than anyone could have predicted. But for Kevin Stefanski. Because every time Shedeur plays well, it reinforces just how wrong the staff was about him. Every highlight is a receipt. Every win is a mirror. And that's where it gets dangerous. Because coaches, especially in the NFL, do not like to be made to look like they're not in control. And when their judgment gets overridden by an owner trying to fix ticket sales, their natural instinct isn't to embrace the change. It's to resist it. Subtly, quietly, but consistently. Shedeur Sanders and Kevin Stefanski. That's what we're seeing. Pulling Sanders on red zone drives. Downplaying his performance. Keeping the public commitment vague. It's all part of the same passive power play. He's not my quarterback, so I'm not going to pretend he is. It's petty. It's transparent. And it's counterproductive. Because whether Stefanski likes it or not, Sanders is now the face of this team. The fans have made that clear. The media has locked in. And the Browns, for once, actually have someone on the field giving them a real shot at not being the laughingstock of the league. And it's wild, because this franchise has begged for a quarterback like this. How many QBs have cycled through Cleveland in the past decade? How many false starts? How many times has this team been just a quarterback away? And now that they might actually have one, they're letting internal dysfunction suffocate his moment? What are we even doing? This is bigger than one game or one press conference. This is about culture, about identity, about whether the Browns want to stay in their cycle of chaos or finally break it. You don't get many chances to reset a franchise's narrative. But a poised, mature, talented young quarterback stepping up in the middle of a crisis? That's one of them. And if the Browns had any sense, they'd be building around Sanders, not pushing back against the wave he's creating. But instead, they're dragging their feet, letting Stefanski play it coy, pretending like this is still some open competition. And for what? To preserve pride? To keep up appearances? Meanwhile, the locker room is watching. Players know what's going on. They know who's grinding, who's bawling, and who's playing politics. If they see a quarterback getting it done on Sundays, but getting cold-shouldered by his own coaching staff, how long before that respect starts to shift? How long before the team starts picking sides? That's the risk here. Because you can't lead a locker room from a place of denial. You can't develop players if your decisions are filtered through resentment. And you definitely can't win consistently if your quarterback's biggest challenge is internal friction, not opposing defenses. The Browns have been given a gift. A young QB with talent, toughness, and the respect of the fan base. But instead of clearing the path for him to thrive, they've built a maze. Full of traps. Full of doubt. Full of power struggles masquerading as football decisions. And Shedeur? He's just putting his head down and navigating it. But let's be real, he shouldn't have to. Not when he's shown he can do the job. Not when he's already won games and energized the entire fan base. And certainly not when the alternative is a coach clinging to control while the franchise teeters on another reset. It's decision time in Cleveland. Either they rally around the guy who's proven he can lead, or they keep pretending this is temporary and watch the whole thing fall apart again. Let's see what they choose. If you're watching this mess unfold and hoping the Browns finally get it right, drop a comment below with your take. Should Stefanski fully commit to Sanders? Is the front office heading toward another implosion? And do you think Haslam's ultimatum will backfire, or be the thing that saves this team from itself? Hit that like button, share it with someone who's tired of Cleveland's QB carousel, and make sure you're subscribed. This story isn't over. It's just getting louder.